All right, we're going to continue with the right side of Louis. I want to show that this side is going to lead to his chest cavity. It's going to be lighter, so we're going to try to get a little yellow in to this far side. I'm looking at a series of photographs which I took, and I always work for my own photographs. I don't like, when I do a portrait of anybody, be it male, female, male, I take my own photographs. I don't like taking photographs somebody else's hands, but usually they're not going to be very good. They're not going to show me what I need. The personality is going to suffer. And if you have to do a painting from something somebody hands you, you're going to be stuck. A lot of times people come up to you and they want you to do a portrait, and they hand you this passport photograph. And they complain to you that you really didn't capture the personality. Well, you got to remember what you're handed was a little 2x3 photograph, black and white. They expect you to colorize it, capture the smile, capture the personality. Kind of hard to do. So I want to offset the initial criticism by taking my own photographs, meet the person, kind of get a glimpse of what they're like. All right, so we've got a pretty good leg up, excuse the pun, on Louis. I want to get the other half in. Notice I haven't put much detail in the lower half. I put a lot of detail in the face. I'm probably going to wait and put a lot more detail in it as I go along. I still, even though you'll see something tonight, it's not the end of the road for this. There's going to be a lot more to Louis. I'm going to spend a good hour, 2-3 hours, putting in detail. That's the nature of my business. What you see tonight is not the final attempt. There are a lot of artists who would be quite satisfied at this, and they would sell it and go off and do 2 or 3 more paintings that night. I am not a one-shot, quick, done type of painter. I take my darn sweet time. And could be why I'm so poor. I don't like people who use the art world as a bandwagon for their ego. I prefer to take my darn sweet time and make it really work. And that's probably why I'm never going to be somebody famous. These guys that do paintings, that they develop a style and they sell their work, and they do 100 paintings of the same style. I don't like doing that. I actually I change every painting. My style comes through because I'm very detail orientated, but I don't do the same subject more than once. I'm kind of like the world of this dog. Louis has brought something to my palette, which I have not done before, so I might actually, I'm thinking about doing a book, a children's book about Louis. I think there's a potential in him. There's a personality in his face that I kind of like, and I think I could do something with it. I haven't really met a dog with as much personality as this guy. I had a dog many years ago. His name was Oreo. And I did, just to show, I did him in pen and ink. Just to show you don't have to necessarily do a dog in paint. He was a black and white dog, so it worked out really good just to do a black and white pen and ink, a rapidograph study of him. And he was a very sober, quiet dog, not very gregarious, quite, didn't have the personality that Louis does. That might be why I never went much further with him. He was a quiet dog, not much of a demeanor. This guy's full of all sorts of different behavioral things. It's funny to watch him work a crowd. He can actually make a crowd love him. It's a funny to watch him go to it. All right, we're working on this. Some dogs know that they're the center of attention. He actually loves being in a crowd. All right, I want to take a look at this photograph one more time. And where was the one I was using? It's underneath. This is it. Sometimes when you use photographs, you have to really refer back to the one you're using to start something. And you have to refer to it. You have to be careful not to go too far from it. I don't want to make a mistake and have him drastically change position or color. So I'm going to stick with the initial. Now, the other thing is this part of his body is not going to involve too much detail, thank God. Not going to be nearly as much detail as, let's say, this part. So let's get going with this side, get it done. The cool thing is I'm going to actually put in little hairs that break the border I put in. By that, let me show you. For instance, if I take a fine hairbrush and I put it into a lighter grouping of color. This one is more tan with a little bit of the unbleached titanium. We're going to have a couple of these go across, form little follicles that go across that. And it adds a whole new consistency. You could actually feel each hair. I could do that with any part of this. I don't want to make his ears bigger. I'm actually going to work down the size of his head by putting in more background color. I think his head's a little bit too big for the size of his body. That happens. I was really overworking that part of him. And the photograph I was using for his body was a different angle than the one I used for his head. You could see the end result. The head looks twice as big as the body. That's because of the angle. All right, here we go. Darken this part. There's kind of a cross. His leg crosses his body. That's the rear of him anyway. My brush is drying as I speak. Studio lights are rough on acrylics. I think they're much easier to deal with oil, though I notice a lot of people use turpenoid like crazy to make the ink, to make the oil flow. You don't do that with acrylics. You use water. And even that doesn't always work, so you have to play around with it. It's lighter on the bottom. I'm going to take a little bit of this brown and work it on the bottom. Blend it a little bit more, get the water flowing. I'm going to do the same thing I did with the other side. I'm going to put the background colors in first. Worry about the colors in the legs next. The background is going to be darker, so we're going to do that first. The last thing I do is put in individual follicles to make them pop out. And actually, I'm not even worried about the individual stuff yet. I'm more worried about getting the total package in. Back leg is done. Now we're talking about the front leg. I could put a little dark here to accentuate the fact this is his rear leg. So I'll put a little dark there. It puts two things. It makes the departure noticeable. Now, we're going to put in the front leg, just like I did with this one. I like the colors. We're going to use the same colors. And here we go. The chest area is white. What I have to do is make sure it translates that way. Like I said, Louis was here before in the studio, but I think those studio lights spooked him. And I didn't want to make him jumpy. He looked a little different now, too. These are photographs of him when he was a puppy, which is only 6 months ago. But it's amazing what summer lights have done to him. He's also put on about 20 pounds. He's not a puppy anymore. He's still a little rapscallion. He's still a little devil. And his personality still shines. But there's nothing like a puppy. And he was quite the handful when he was a puppy. I'm glad I took about 100 photographs of him, because I'm going to need every one of those when I do the book. And I took a lot of photographs of him. So they're going to come in very handy. I just have to think of a premise. And since most dogs have trying experiences, I'm going to try to come up with something along that line. Every dog goes through everyone has a dog's day. Maybe that's basically what it's going to be about, a dog's day. He's a natural. He's a ham bone. And his face tells so much. You just look at him and you see a different thing coming out of his face. I recently invested in buying him a very large treat. I bought him this humongous bone. It looked like some dinosaur bone. And I brought it to the house. He comes over all the time. He's my daughter's dog. And he came over, and I'm telling you, the look on his face when he saw the bone was priceless. He didn't know what to make of it. It was bigger than he is. He couldn't pick it up. It was fun to watch. It was fun to watch him look at it. His eyes glistened. And he had hours of fun munching on it. And my daughter would not take the bone with her, so he knows he has to come over to play with it. Because I'm sure he would make a mess with it wherever he was. Okay, now the bottom of this leg is darker. We're going to go back to this grouping of paint and darken it up accordingly. Coming along nicely. I'm using Payne's Gray and raw umber for the dark. I'm also using a lot of unbleached titanium to blend it, to neuter it, so it won't be so harsh. Underneath here, we're going to go with a really dark assortment. So I'm going to go with that same assortment, but not so much the tan. It's going to be more the unbleached, no unbleached titanium. It's going to be more the raw umber and Payne's Gray. I use Payne's Gray instead of black. I don't use black. Any artist worth the salt will tell you black is too dominant a color. It'll just completely obliterate all the other colors on the canvas. So a word to the wise, don't use black. Even under the most pressing situations, black is too strong. It just wipes out all the other colors. And no sense putting yourself behind the 8-ball when you're doing something. And to tell you the truth, it works rather nicely. Payne's Gray works nicely. It's sufficiently dark. You don't need to go much darker than that. Notice I'm going to make this dark all the way to a certain point. I'm going to blend it up to the chest cavity. We're going to work on the foot. I think what I want to do is go back to this brush now and put in individual, well, no, I'm going to go back to this brush for one thing. I want to put an assortment of color in here. And we're going to go back to using individual hairs in a minute. Right now, because I'm under pressure with time, I just want to put a big assortment of color in. I'm going to make it dark in the bottom, so I'm going back to the colors I made. The underside of his paw is dark. We're going to work right into that dark underbelly. We're going to go back to this dark, make it a little bit darker as a matter of fact. Even though it's dark, it's still not as dark as the background. And that's because I used a metallic tone. It's still going to pop out. Let's go back to this lighter one now. And another light one on top of that. We have all these colors mixed up ahead of time. And I think I want a little bit more of a brown. So, we'll put that in. I will eventually put in a nice grouping of individual hairs. Right now I'm just trying to get a nice little amount of color in there. Looking good. I brush it up to the leg, fill this in with color, probably make it a tad darker here. Very good, we're there. What I want to do next is put some highlighting, or should I say low lighting, in the chest area. And Louis is shaping up nicely. Okay, let's look into this area. I have that brush that's thin and long. I want to put a couple of, from the neck down, I'm going to put a couple of lines coming in here. The great thing about acrylic, what I painted 10 minutes ago is bone dry. So I can put my hand on that and it will not smudge. If this was oil, I couldn't do that. And again, this type of brush is great because you can imitate the shape of hair. That's what I'm doing right now. I'm imitating the wave of hair. And it's coming out rather nicely. I'm going to do a couple of these right here. Come along nicely. Now, even though he looked small because of the fact his body was white, it's shaping up nicely now. He doesn't look nearly as small as he was when he wasn't filled in. What I'm going to do with the white now, instead of using a brown highlighting or low lighting, I'm going to take the Payne's Gray, which is right here, and mix it to a separate area. Put in just a tad of white. and see what happens. I don't want it to be gray, so I'm going to put a touch of unbleached titanium in there. What that'll do is make it kind of a light brown. And that's exactly what I want. I don't want it to be unbleached titanium. I don't want it to be gray. I don't want it to be white. I want this type of in-between color, which is going to be perfect. I'm going to go from here. I'm going to make this very wet so I can make nice long lines. Here we go. I'm going from underneath. I better put this here so I can see it better. I'm going from underneath so I can match these lines. Now, what I could do and what I will do is get a secondary grouping of color. Probably a darker one. I'm going to go for this, which was the color I normally use. It was kind of a Payne's gray and raw umber. I want to really make it just a little bit darker. I'm going to go into here, do the same thing with the colors I had. Perfect. I want this to match nicely. I want it to be very, very harmonious. Yeah, I got it. It's very important to, when you're doing something like a dog, you have to have the palette right in front of you. You have to make sure the colors all make sense. With him, he's only got 4 basic colors in his whole spectrum. Every now and then, though, he does take on colors of any room he's in. So I'm going to put those in eventually. They're going to be little highlights. Little shocks of blue, little shocks of green, whatever it enters. All right, here we go. Now I could really go to town with some of these details. For instance, this brush is great for individual hairs, and that's what I'm going to do right now. I'm going to make some of these hairs on the bottom darker. This is my forte right here, detail. So what I'm going to do is work on the detail now. I like to see this happen. I'm using Payne's gray and raw umber and nothing else. Here we go. The bottom of his foot is dark. Well, we're approaching the end of another episode. I just want to thank everybody for watching. I want to thank Nutmeg for allowing me to do this. Like I said, somewhere Louis is going to be home watching this, enjoying every moment, because he's going to know it's him on TV. It's amazing. This dog is so perceptive, it's scary. Okay. And I really enjoyed doing him. I think the idea of doing a dog story has potential. I've never done that, but you know what? Why not? It's kind of fun, and he's got a personality. It wouldn't be something I'd have to create so much as try to capture. It's there. So we're going to do a little bit dark on the bottom. I'm going to take a little bit more of the Payne's gray, a little bit more of the Payne's gray and the burnt umber, combine the two. The bottom has to be darker. There's no two ways about that. It shouldn't be confusing. You shouldn't have to wonder if there's a light bulb. Is he sitting on a light bulb? Why is there light there? We're going to make that obvious. think I captured him pretty good. I have to bring a couple of paintings to a critique this coming week, and I'm thinking about bringing him. See what the lady will say. The person who does the critiques, her name is Doe Bartlett, and she's wonderful. She's one of the best critique people I've ever met. She could look at a painting and tell exactly what's wrong or right. And she is every bit as sweet or as vicious as she will let herself be. And she's usually very pertinent. She doesn't waste anyone's time. So we'll see how she likes Louis. I think he's coming out pretty good. Now, with this leg, I'm going to take the same tone and put a little bit of dark underneath it, because again, it's looking like it's all the same tone. So we're going to just do a little bit more. We're going to do a little bit more. We're almost at the end of this episode, and I'm pretty happy with the way Louis turned out. Anyway, again, just to remind all the viewers, I teach a class at the Farmington River School of Art every Sunday from 1 to 4. Anybody's welcome to pop right in, right off of West Main Street, East Main Street in Plainville. And you don't have to call ahead or anything, just show up. I would recommend that if you have something in mind, bring in your idea with the, that does help. And if you want to do it in acrylics or pen and ink or pencil, no problem. I'm more than a one-trick pony, and I'd be willing to help anybody. All right, put a little bit more dark in the bottom of his toes, just to have it pop.